You all right?
Okay.
Ready for this?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm here. Okay. I will. I'm in my normal area, so I could actually talk now versus last Thursday.
Okay, that's good. I wanted to pick up, I guess, at managed project team. Remember, we were, or maybe I should remind us where we're at. We're in the execution process group, right? And we were looking at the 3 human resource management. There were 8 processes in the execution process group, and 3 of them belong to human resources. So, which makes sense, again, because the mindset is that this is during the execution of the project. Here's where we're applying resources, particularly human resources. So we took a look at 9.2, 9.3, and 9. We were at 9.4. We were at 9.4, managing the project team. Is this okay? Okay, so let's pick it up there at 9.4. All right. Okay, here's the process itself. Obviously, HR management plan is a major input to any of the HR. And again, it's the .1, so it would be the plan for all of its downstream processes within the knowledge group. Project staff assignments, team performance assessments, issue logs, okay, work performance reports, OPAs. All of that, if you look on the left, all of that's people related, okay? So if you're looking for a way to try to memorize things or at least, say to myself, what am I doing? I'm executing human resources, so I'm going to need, what am I doing? That would be resource calendars, that would be an HR management plan, would be that, et cetera, et cetera. My tools and the techniques for managing the team, and this is managing the team now in battle, right? So we're performing the project now. Growing my team was back in 9.3 where we did the rewards and recognitions and such like that. But 9.4, this is more about running the project. So we're going to do observation and conversation. So we're trying to grow our folks here professionally as project managers. So the tools and techniques include observation and conversation, very simple. Project performance. Hold on a second, Aubrey, please.
Take your time.
Well, it's going to be. All right, so let me restart the recording. Okay, where were we? Project performance appraisals, right? And those project performance appraisals are where we're talking about our folks, kind of, those annual reviews or semi-annual reviews. Going to use conflict management. Here's where the rubber meets the road. That's why conflict management is here in the execution process, right? You may be doing conflict management right from day one. I mean, you might have conflicting requirements and all kinds of things going on, and you need a referee or a cut man or something. But here, really, while things are going on, there's tensions are the highest, people are the busiest, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to learn how to handle conflict. Interpersonal skills included all of the listening and management and all those kinds of things that make a project manager. Not everybody can be a project manager. I mentioned this before, because if you can't handle some conflict, you don't want to be involved. That's not my cup of tea. Or, I'm not into trying to convince somebody into doing something that they really, then maybe this isn't the job for you. Okay. Your output is some change requests, and this would be HR requests. As you execute a project, people are on and off the project all the time. If the project changes, if the scope changes, so would the resource requirements. So you can see some of the reasons why you would have a change request out of managed project team. And remember what I told you when I showed you that big cycle screen that I built showing you the sausage factory. I showed you that changes don't all come from the control processes, do they? Some of the execution processes can generate changes themselves. Usually it has to do with either scope or people, like you're seeing here, okay? And of course the effect of the progressive elaboration. And they say EEF updates, but so you're always, as you bring people on, maybe you're going to keep them, maybe you learn something from them, maybe they change the culture, maybe that kind of thing. So you have some updates, and the same thing with process assets. Conflict management for the exam, Aubrey, you're going to have to know five strategies, much like I showed you for risk management. You had positive, negative strategies. You have to know these strategies for conflict management. The first one is withdraw or avoid. And again, I'm showing it to you on a scale of, I guess, nothing to too strong, almost like those weak to strong matrix, right? Is here withdraw and avoid means there's conflict, and I'm not even going to get involved. I'll let them settle it. Not a good. It's really not a good conflict strategy unless that's how it was going to end up anyway. In other words, let's say the CFO is fighting with the CTO. I can put them in a room. That's about the best that I can do and get the hell out of the way, and maybe they'll figure it out. So withdraw, avoid, it means exactly what it sounds like. I'm going to remove myself from this situation. That if that's your standard procedure, that you're not a very good project manager. You also have smooth accommodate, which is almost as bad. To me, it's like that's just being given in. What do you want? I'll give it to you, just so I don't have any conflict. You have to solve a problem for the good of the project, for the good of the project. That's what we're supposed to do. So I've used all of these strategies at one time or another, but not, even smooth accommodated, because sometimes that's what you do. You grease the wheels. Compromise and reconcile. This is the one where this is the middle of the road choice on strategies where we try to find a common ground. But, again, this is not necessarily the best strategy. Sometimes the one side is right. The one side's view is exactly right for the project, okay? So compromising from exactly right is not a good strategy, but you need to know what it means. That means we're going to find something that makes us both happy. And we all know that when we talk about compromise, usually it means nobody's really happy. And if nobody's really happy, then it's probably a good deal, okay? You have force direct. This is where I'm actually going to make it happen. I'm pulling rank on you. I'm a sergeant, you're a private, and you'll do what I tell you. Okay, so I can force conflict, and sometimes you have to. Or you understand that I can't let things fester, especially if the project's not moving along while these things are happening. Okay, if this conflict is causing a delay, especially on a critical path task, all right, I got to do something about it. I may have to force and direct. The best of them is the last one, okay? And again, it's not this. Maybe this one's more in the middle of the scale, but it's collaborate, problem solve, and this is the one that you want to use the most if you can. This is where we're not dealing with unskilled folks in many cases. A lot of our projects are engineering projects, software projects, so we're dealing with professionals, right? And so and so they have brains, they have experience, they have ideas, they have opinions. All right. If maybe it would be actually arrogant for a guy, even as long as me, 40 years doing this, to say I know everything. I don't. I don't. I'm learning every day, just like everybody else does. And but for the exam, Aubrey, you need to know these 5 strategies. Okay. Before I move off the screen, they were pretty self-explanatory. I think you're okay. I'm just going to go ahead and move on. Are you okay?
Yes, sir, I am. I just know that it's good that you're breaking this down even more.
Yep.
Because I'm liking the way this is now.
Good.
A lot of the puzzles are coming together, by the way. I'll talk to you later about that.
Good. Good. I figured it might be, okay? There's always a lot of confusion, particularly we get about knee deep into the methodology. Everybody's still a little confused and they want to ask me questions I haven't got to yet. So I'm glad we're getting to this far. All right, we're almost finished in the execution process. We have communications management. And in execution, it's 10.2. You can see communications management is one of those. We only have 3 processes, but they're very powerful processes. Remember what I told you about communications management? It's really how you, the project manager, effectively manage your project. They're taking from what's in your brain and in your heart and putting it into some sort of medium that sends out to your team to keep the project moving. You created a communications plan, which decided who gets what, when, what frequency, what detail, all of that kind of thing was decided the more you decide in the communications plan, the more smoother it runs once you start to execute. You really want to get people used to a routine because then people don't freak out. Then people are doing what they need to do because it's a routine. So, and I say the same thing with communications. Now it moves, it changes because it's a living baseline because you have people come on and off the project, stakeholders as well as project team members, all right? But you're going to manage your communications to what baseline? to the plan that you created back in T10.1, and that was that communications plan, much like just an Excel spreadsheet, much like many of the registers I've showed you so far in our. So let's take a look at 10.2 and how we manage our communication. So remember back in 10.1 what we did. We decided all those things. We decided who gets to know what, and we took all the sensitivity of confidentiality and consideration. We looked at all the different medium options to us, including all the high-tech stuff today. And we talked about what the advantages of using and some of the disadvantages of using. The advantages, obviously, there's speed and accountability and archive and analytics and such like that. Disadvantages are that you lose a little bit of the human touch, okay? That you're dealing with people over electronics, okay? And it's not quite the same. So you do give up a level of human interaction when you do. But they wanted you to know that. And they also want you to know, take in consideration, virtual teams. Like I said, you're probably going to see a handful of questions in this regard because they want you to be a modern project manager. They want you to think about that my team, half my team could be in India and the other half of my team spread out across North America. People, different accents, different time zones, different cultures, different everything, okay? So they want you're going to see a handful of questions on dealing with that, all right? Let's take a look at 10.2. The .1, of course, is going to be an input. The work performance reports. EEFs, work performance reports. What's that? That's the earned value management stuff, right? So we're going to be taking all the other communications, but those work performance reports, those are the earned value that we're going to send out to our, and within those work performance reports are also, late tasks and all those kinds of things that you get out of MS Project. But that's what those because those are the inputs of the communications. I'm going to send status out to my stakeholders, okay? Remember, communications is duplex. It's full range. So your communications plan also included communications from them to you. All right. Your tools and techniques are communications technology. All right. So all the things that we talked about, the emails, the video conferencing, SharePoints, everything, all the things that we would use to collaborate, to discuss, to plan, to execute. Okay. So it's all the technology that we involved. Communications models we talked to, and remember, the only one that PMBOK called out was the very simple one, encode all the way down to acknowledge, right? And if you do get a question about that, they're going to want to know about the noise over the medium. Noise meaning that it's misinterpretation or it's foggy. It's a foggy message. That's what they mean, okay? The different communication methods that we talked about, information management systems like MS Project, but that also includes other systems within, let's say, projects talking to an ERP, and the ERP is kicking off other things. Okay, so information management system. Your performance reporting is a tool and technique, and your output are your communications. Nice, simple. It's a big bucket. Project communications, that's your output. So everything that's communicating on your project through all your stakeholder channels is the output here. And this is a running output. So you're going to, this is during execution. You may have at different times of the project, different communication requirements, right? And so that's why things might change from the communications plan, but they're always going to be, the output's always going to be a controlled output. It should be. Should follow the plan that you made, all right? And there's impromptu communication, of course, but to really control your project, okay, you want to do the bulk of it within your communications plan. And of course, the effect of progressive elaboration and OPA updates. Okay, when we talk about managing communications, it's the key, choosing the right style or approach, okay? So you have those sender-receiver models that we talked about. I only showed you one. That's all they asked you for. You concern yourself with your choice of media, written, oral, electronic, face-to-face, that kind of thing, as you're managing communication. Sometimes, I like it face-to-face, especially if I'm working. This new gig I just got today is a war room full of people, okay? So I just get up from my chair, go over to another section and talk to folks. That's, it's what's the best available. My writing style. This is a lost art, I think, in the world. People don't know how to write letters anymore. I think a lot of it, Aubrey, this is just me and you talking, is that this generation is all text happy. So they text half sentences, and so they live half sentences when they write real letters. They want to use IDK and they BFF and what. I just don't think that writing, the English language, right, is being used correctly. a good, well-written business letter correspondence is fantastic. It's very powerful. When it comes to emails,
I
I like to keep them one paragraph if I
could
can.
agree. I could agree with you 100%.
Exactly, especially emails. Because think about it, I'm sending an email to yet another busy professional. Is it busy or busier than I am? If I hide what I really wanted to tell them in paragraph 3, it's likely he didn't see it. It's likely he didn't see it. So first off, I don't write 3-paragraph emails, okay? I write 1 paragraph, all right? And I get to the point and get it done with. You remember who you're, so you got to think about stuff like that. And again, like, I'm glad you agree with me. The English language is being murdered every day. You have meeting management techniques. I don't know if we talked about these. I think we did, about having an agenda. We did. Make sure that you have an agenda, be punctual, and have action items. Those, if there were 3, that's it. But I would also say set ground rules. That very first meeting, everybody's looking at you and saying, okay, what kind of guy are you? You want to set that pace because you're not going to get a chance to set it a second time. You might be able to pick up the pace later, but it's not going to. You want to set a professional tone right from the beginning, meetings included. Presentation methods, right? Body language and visual aids. So you have other ways to present. I could be a street mime, right? And I'm not saying a word. It's all hand signals and stupid faces. All right. Facilitation techniques build consensus. So we're trying to build consensus as we go through a project. All right, hold on a second, Aubrey, because that's my other, and this is only going to be. I couldn't help that. Okay. All right. So we talked about facilitation techniques, right? We want to build consensus. That's what we are. We're project managers. So what we're trying to do is get the project from start to finish one way or another, right? I mean, I've had projects where it was very collaborative and it ran smooth, and I had other projects where I had to drag people kicking and screaming. Hopefully I can build consensus somewhere in the middle where a bunch of professionals get together and stop arguing and come to a consensus. And really that's up to you to say, all right, that's enough time. Almost like an MC on, a game show host, all right, that says, look, all right, we got to keep moving on. We got to move on to the next round or whatever. This is what you have to do as a project manager. And you got to do it tactfully. You got to do it tactfully. You got to do it diplomatically, even if you have, because if you do the force thing, okay, you might win the battle and then end up losing the war. You understand what I mean? Listening techniques. This is something I've learned. I've gotten much better at it. When I was a younger man, I didn't listen much. I thought I knew everything. Come out of the Navy. The Navy taught me the right way. I was usually right. So I'll say that. But I mean, you got to have listening. You have to be able to listen as a project manager, okay? Because people say things. Sometimes you sit in a meeting, Aubrey, okay, and somebody says something that it just didn't sound right. It just didn't sound right. It had like a tin sound to it in your brain, okay? And you say to yourself, no, wait a second, go back to that. And it was something that you should have looked at. You were listening. You're talking to people. When I talk about active listening, I'm almost talking to you, and I'm asking you leading questions. I want you to talk to me, and it's a really good technique. Okay, when you start with your stakeholders, remember you're trying to get the project out of them. Okay. Now let's talk about procurement management. I'm going to go whiz right by this because we already did this, didn't we? We did. That's why I said I showed you conduct procurement. So we're going to go past it. But you remember that what this process is. This is the selection process. This is us sending out RFPs to vendors, accepting their responses for proposals, where we ran them through a bunch of criteria that we set with matrices and all kinds of things, and we've selected our vendors and we signed the agreements. That's what we did in 12.2. Remember, I said my pet peeve is I think this is more of a planning process, but PMBOK has it in execution. So remember, that's where it is for the test. Okay. All right. Stakeholder management. As you can see, we're already at the .3 for the stakeholder management. This was the strange one that the .1 was, and the same, the .1 is up in the initiation process group, right? So the real .1, the plan, is .2 here, okay? And I mentioned that before when we were in the planning group. I want to mention it again here. What we set up in planned stakeholder management, remember what we did is we started with a stakeholder register, right? And within that register, we continued to add fields of attributes about our our stakeholders, the requirements, their level of authority, their interests, all those things down the line, okay? Their issues, their identified risks, etc. Okay? Well, that document is the baseline, the living baseline that we're going to use to manage our stakeholder engagement. So as you can see the pattern here, if it's not an official formal baseline like time, cost, and scope are, okay, they still are baselines. We still have something that's pretty good, right? It's pretty good. I mean, we did set some boundaries, maybe not so much in stakeholder management because we're really dealing with people's feelings and such, but it's some of like risk is a great one to mention, okay, that it's a living baseline. But we set a lot of parameters. We do have our arms around it, and we do know at any given time, looking at that risk register, what we should do about our risks. Same principle applies here with our living baseline for our stakeholders, right? So we're going to manage the stakeholders based on the plan that we put together. So let's take a look at 13.3. Stakeholder management plan, that should be there because it's, the plan for that knowledge area. The communications management plan, and again, even PMBOK sees it right here as inputs. I'm telling you, it's almost like in the beginning, the very first two processes I showed you. Remember the charter and the identify stakeholders were kind of like the arrows were pointing next to each other, two boxes standing next to, they feed off each other. Same here. Same here. As I'm putting my stakeholders together, I'm putting my communications management plan together. That's how I'm going to manage my stakeholders. Like I said, unless they're right in front of me, I'm in the same building with me, then I need to manage them through over time, and I need to do it in a structured manner, okay? Change logs. And I'm going to tell you, I know I mentioned this to you before, and I think I have the screen back in here again, is when you're managing stakeholders, there's the intersection between some key documents, issue logs, change logs, risk register, and stakeholder register. Those four documents there have a lot of crossover from them. In other words, something I read in one document maybe give me an idea that I have a problem going before it happens, kind of thing. Those four documents are the ones that stakeholders have their hands in. Not only do they register, but the issue and change logs. Who created whose issues and who changes are we talking about? The stakeholders. Okay, so watch those issue and change logs because that's really what they want to know about. Next time the guy sees you in the hallway, he wants to know about his issues and his changes. Like most people, their stuff's the most important, particularly when they talk. So like I'm saying, if you want to manage, that's a good place to look, is the intersection of those four documents. Communications methods we talked about, interpersonal skills, management skills, change requests coming right out of an execution process, the issue log that I talked about. And this is, communications, what I told you, it's duplex, right? So our stakeholders are sending us emails or something telling us they have issues. This doesn't work. The screen isn't right. I don't have that function I'm supposed to have, whatever it is, okay? They're the ones, so through the communications plan from them to us, we're going to have an issue. They're going to send us issues. We're going to have an issue log. What do you think an issue log and a change log look like? They're spreadsheets, okay? So there are issues with all, and the subsequent columns are all the attributes about each issue that I want to know, right? And just like with the risk register, we're going to monitor it, okay? We're going to watch it, and we're going to address it at every staff meeting. So you're going to assign junior people to these logs, okay? So that when you ask them, say, hey, Joe, tell me about the issues today, okay? He comes prepared. That's what I mean by really setting ground rules. I don't have to tell you. I mean, you knew that in the first meeting, and from now on, the issue log belongs to you. And then I don't have to say it again. That's all I'm saying. And of course, you have the effect of progressive elaboration and OPA updates. Okay, so when we manage the stakeholder engagement, I put it to you this way. This is my 40 years talking. I'm telling you that you're going to be setting and resetting expectations, and you're going to want to do it on an even keel. And I use baseball as the analogy here that it's a long game, it's a long season, and it's a long career. Okay, so when you talk to some of the great hitters out there, they'll tell you that when they're on a hot streak, they don't let themselves, their emotions get too high. And when they're in a slump, they don't let themselves get too down, okay? Because they know from experience that by the time we get to September, things all worked out in the wash. That slumps don't last forever, neither do streaks. So you don't want people all high and low, particularly too high so that when they fall hard, all right? Keep their expectations reasonable. Keep them reasonable so that you don't have to go. so far. If they do run a stream, bring them back to reasonable, okay? I'm telling you, be real proactive in risk and issue management when you manage your stakeholders. And the reason I say that is because if it's not, you don't want them to tell you, hey, are you working on my issues? You want to tell them, yes, I'm working on issues and here's where they're at. It's a completely different environment, okay? So I'm telling you, as a good project manager, you're being proactive here. You don't wait for, and sometimes you do get hit with things that you didn't see. But if you do this as part of your normal routine, this is who you are. You're just going to stay proactive. You're looking at these registers and these logs yourself, and you're going to be proactive. You see things happen, particularly in risk management, where we went out of our way to identify precursor events. Remember the triggers. So the triggers, we see a trigger event, we don't even have to be, pensive about it. We can see the trigger event happen. We have a risk that's going to happen down the road. Let's be proactive about it, okay? We want to resolve conflict between stakeholders. And the way you do that is you remove the obstacles. Perhaps the conflict's because you can't do something that you wanted to do, so now you can't agree on anything. So maybe the actual resolution of the conflict is an answer that hasn't even been discussed yet. It might be a third option or a fourth option, okay, that actually resolves things. The actual resolving of the conflict is your job to do. So you want to find common grounds another way, okay? Maybe I can find some common ground. Let's start with the fact that we both agree that the sky is blue, right? No, you think it's green. Wow, okay. So now we're in real trouble. I don't know. I mean, I don't mean to be silly, but I'm saying I like to start, especially with when it looks like there's a stalemate going on, okay? I like to kind of backtrack back to where we did agree on stuff. Well, where did we stop agreeing? Let's go back to that for a second and see where we can. And you know what? The technique has worked for me. So the techniques work for me. It'll make people come back to being reasonable again before they start arguing again, And stakeholders, like I told you, is tightly tied to the communications plan. It's like hand in glove, that the stakeholder knowledge area is the hand and the communications management is the glove, okay? That fits over top of it. All right. This something I want to remind you of that I mentioned early in the sessions, that the stakeholder influence is at the highest at the beginning of a project and then tapers off. This is a general rule, not all the time. Some stakeholders stay engaged and they have their influence all the way through the project. What PMBOK is trying to get you to think about here is that when the project is still in the wish list stage, or maybe a little bit past that, all right, that as you try to get controls put in, as you try to get a nice management contingency put aside, those kinds of things, early is when to get these guys, when the enthusiasm's high, when the rah-rah's high, when everybody's, before it becomes drudgery, before your key sponsor goes off and he's doing something else all day. And, oh, yeah, I forgot about that project. No, 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 no. You want to so you want to get as many things on your plate as you can early from your stakeholders that have influence to give it to you, is what I'm saying here, okay? Remember that. We manage a state, here it is. That is the screen that I thought I had here. It's a slice of the real world. This is Clark to you, Aubrey, as I'm telling you. These are the 4 documents that as you look at these 4 documents, they do have a lot of similarities. They're not written exactly the same and all that, but if I can look at one thing, it's probably, it looks like something else in the other document. Is what I'm saying is that as I look at these 4 documents, I'm getting a good idea about what my stakeholders' issues and their mood is. Remember, I know these are humans now, so it's not just dealing with a task. It's not just a piece of equipment, like a bobcat or something. I don't care if it's having a good day or not, but I do care if my stakeholders are, and I do care if they're dissatisfied, and I really care if they're dissatisfied and they're not saying it. The worst stakeholders are the ones that have issues, but they just but they don't want to tell you about them. They're underlying. Maybe they don't tell you because they don't trust you, or they're just I don't know, bad people and stuff. I don't know. You got to find those folks and find out what's with them and get under there and get to their issues. Okay, it's the art part of. Remember, I told you there's art and there's a science of project management. This is the art side. This is the art side almost completely. Also remember that these documents, as well as the stakeholder moods and expectations and requirements, are going to change over time. It's a living baseline because we're talking about people, right? So their perceptions, their influences, their requirements, their issues change over time. So each and every day might be a different story, okay? Here we are in quality management, 8.2. Now, we talked about 8.1 and we went through all the 7 quality tools. It's about prevention inspection. So when we're talking about in execution with quality, what do you think we're talking about? We're out there doing our inspections, right? So this is our people that we sent out there. Remember, we had to figure in cost of quality into our original project plan. So what our cost of quality are going to be our QA, our QA people, our QC people. So we're going to perform audits. We're going to perform inspections. We're going to do samples. We're going to do calculations. We're going to sit down and do a lot of things, that activities that are quality related. Here in the execution process group is what we're going to do. QA supports continuous improvement. So any good quality person, if Jill was on the call, would tell you that's what it's all about, the PDCA cycle, that you are never done. You always can improve. You can always improve. I don't care if you're Michael Jordan, okay? Michael Jordan missed shots, he made some goofy plays. So even the greatest player of all time wasn't perfect. There's always continuous improvement. Now, humans can only get so good, but processes can be run almost like a Swiss watch. I got to tell you, I saw a presentation, Japanese presentation, when they do their cumulatives, it's almost like a spike. It's almost like a one line. It's not even a bell curve. That's how tight they get their processes. It's not quite, but it's pretty close. I mean, you talk about it's almost perfect, okay? And still they're not satisfied. Okay? Tools and techniques. The 7 quality tools that we talked about are a good start. Okay, there's all kinds of other things out there to measure quality, but these tools here and the reasons you would use them, okay, pretty much cover just about everything that you would want to do, making sure that the requirements, whatever measurements, et cetera, et cetera. It's relationships and through all that kind of stuff. The 7 basic quality tools pretty much cover everything. Okay. Yeah. Now I want you to know that in the project management world, the word audit means formal. Okay, you have inspection and you have audit. In other professions, they may be reversed. Maybe the inspection is the most important and all, but not in this one. So know that in our methodology, Aubrey, that audit means, and you're going to see it a couple of times, we do audits. Audits are formal. That means it's a formal process that we're going to document it and create a document from it that everybody agreed on or something. And it's a quality audit. And it's going to create action items, all right? But the difference is for the exam, audit's a formal process, inspection is a daily process or a normal task-driven process, okay? You also have process analysis. This is really what these guys are doing, the Six Sigma people are doing in the background, right? A process, particularly repetitive processes, are being measured over and over and over again so that we can try to find the variation in the process. What the whole idea about Six Sigma is to find waste, or what the Japanese call muda, in a process, right? Meaning activity or effort that has no good use at all to the process. Remove it. Or the other condition is that a customer won't pay for it. That's the other condition. So you remove those two, and what's left is the process. All right, it's a nice lean process. So that's what they're doing here. And when we talk about root cause, remember that the tool, that if they ask you a root cause question, they're asking you about that Ishikawa fishbone diagram, right? If they say root cause, they're actually looking for you to deploy a particular tool. You're looking for root cause, and that's what Ishikawa does. Okay. All right. Let's look at the process itself. Quality management plan, of course, it belongs there. It's the .1. Process improvement plan. Remember when we came out of 8.1, we had 2 outputs. This was the process improvement plan. So the quality management plan on how to manage quality, the audits, the inspections, what sample sizes, what measurements, what does it have to reach to be acceptable, all that kind of stuff. Then you have the process improvement plan, which says if we were going to improve a process, this is how we would do it, how we would gather data, how we would validate it, how we would do our calculations, et cetera, okay? That's in that plan. The metrics that we decided, and believe me, this is the most, as you can see, from knowledge area to knowledge area, the metrics, whatever that means. In scope, for example, it's how you would verify what's in and what's out. In costs, all right, you have, fixed costs. So metrics, we have lines in the sand. Every one of the knowledge areas, whether it's nebulous or it's nice and solid, has to have some way to measure, right? Otherwise, what are we managing? If you can't, there's an old adage, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So each and every one of these knowledge areas, as you notice, comes up with some way to put fences and measurements around its particular area of knowledge. No, certainly quality is no different. In fact, you're going to see a lot of metrics. The QC measurements, QC is something that's done above, QA is out in the field, QC is back in the back office. Then, of course, you have the project documents, tools and techniques. There's quality management and control tools that we talked about, quality audits. Remember, I told you this is a formal process. That's all you really need to know for the exam, okay? Because how it's done, you're going to bring quality people in. We're project managers. So I'm going to bring a quality person to do an audit. I mean, I can inspect quality myself as a project manager. I've seen it enough. And I know that there are original quality requirements from the beginning, so I could follow those. But some of these audits, okay, I want somebody that really knows what they're doing. The process analysis, that's what I was talking about when you're trying to do the cumulative distribution to a bell curve so I can remove variation, figure standard deviation so that I can run a process between the upper and lower control limits in a Six Sigma fashion, right? That's where we're going with this. So when they're talking about process analysis, that's what they mean, Aubrey. They're that little Six Sigma thing there where you're measuring a repetitive process, you're figuring out the mean and then the cumulative distribution, the calculation for variation I showed you, then standard deviation, knowing that 3 standard deviations either side of the mean is Six Sigma, right? Upper, lower control limits. That's what they're talking about here. The outputs, as you can see, you're going to have progressive elaboration and OPA outputs. And again, change request right out of an execution process, okay? Because I'll find something in an audit or an inspection or something, and I'm just going to create a change order right then and there. I'm not going to wait for a control process to find it. Okay, we are now done the execution processes. Let me just do real quick. It's only 20 minutes to 7, so we're going to get into, let's jump into the monitor and control for about 20 and take a break. Okay? We're doing pretty good here, Aubrey. As you can see, there are 11 processes for monitor and control. I guess before I leave the execution process group, I should ask you if any of those or anything about the execution process group you have a question about.
No, I noticed one thing. There was under human resources, one of the inputs didn't have an environmental EEF, only the OPA,
Okay.
which was kind of I noticed.
You know, I find the same. I think the same things, and it does bother me because I'm thinking to myself, why wouldn't I use OPAs and EEFs for human resources, whether I'm planning my team, whether I'm managing the execution, whether I'm managing their careers? I agree with you, man. I have my little pet peeves with PMBOK but for the most part, I think it's brilliant. For the most part, I think it's brilliant. I think it's because I know how bad it was. I know 40 years ago that we only managed a triple constraint, and that I've watched my profession grow and get smarter. So I'm with you, man. You're gonna, you know what that shows, though, Aubrey, that you're getting better, that you're seeing stuff, and that's and it actually is kicking off in your brain because you're getting good. All right.
Yeah, by the way, I made on chapters 2 and 3, I took a test and I made a 60.7. I about fell over. I was so happy.
I think you're going to be a fine PMP, sir, but that's just, what the hell do I know? Well, I know that, I think. But okay, I think you're okay, right, on the execution processes. So they kind of pretty, so as you can see, as a project manager, regular guy thinking, right? What did we do? We initiated our process, so we got our arms around requirements. Then we took it into planning, and we created the triple constraint by considering all the major things major concepts and pieces of a project, okay? To create that, we took it into execution. I showed you the 8 processes that we would use. 3 of them are human resources. The rest of them were to execute their knowledge areas. Now that the work is underway, so picture the workflow is where people are being work and things are being completed, and now we're measuring that work, okay? We're measuring the progress of the work from day 1 to the end of the project. How are we doing? It's going to be these processes that are going to help us to get to that point, okay? So, I wanted to make sure I wasn't in pause, because that would have sucked. Okay. So let's go ahead back. As you can see, this is a screenshot from the Vargas drawing. I love this Vargas drawing, guy. This is one that if you want to look at a drawing to memorize the flow of the processes, or at least the grouping of the processes, this is a good one. So if you like visual, this is really good. I like it. It's eye pleasing. It's accurate. Um, and it works. So I mean, and it helps me explain things. Now, before I leave this screen here, okay, let's look at the process group itself, and you can see again, integration management plays a big role here, right? That there is at least one process and integration management in every one of the process groups. Why? Because it is the tie. It's the common bond. It's the tie. It's the highways between the process groups, okay, and within the process groups. So you'll see 4.4 and 4.5. And remember, I showed you that between 4.3, 4.4, and 4.5 is the heart of change control, right? So as these guys here, so as the work is flowing past these other control processes, we're measuring time, we're measuring cost against, of course, the baselines, right? We're generating our changes, our kappas that are going to go back through the change requests here through integration management. See how it's forced to do so. It's forced to do so. So whatever we do here, whether even things are going well, I still have to go through integration management and decide, do I need to ask for a change? No, I'll just forward, then I'm going to forward everything back to the beginning of the process, right? So let's go ahead and, wow, monitor control. Hold on a second here. Where the hell are you? Let me put this on pause for just a second. Let's jump into the monitor control processes, and we'll call it a night. Here we go. Let me just jump in. Start here. All right. Now, as I told you, remember, think like a project manager. Now, where are we? We're now into the fourth process group of the 5, right? This is the monitor control process. So, like I said, envisioning that we initiated the project with a charter, which is a good set of requirements, and we knew who our stakeholders were. We took that into planning. In planning, we considered all of the dynamics. That's the word I was looking for, of a project that can cause project problem, other than just a triple constraint. And we came up with a triple constraint and baselined our project. We executed that project now, and we are starting to see work being performed in the field, or whatever the field means, for the project. And now we want to measure its progress. So what happens is, as the work is being completed, it's generating data about itself, right? Where am I in my completion? All right, and that information sent over to the monitor and control. That data, I'm sorry, is sent over to the monitor and control process, because, like I said, again, I want to make a point that if you think like this for the exam, you're going to be just fine. The data, the information to reports, just like, and I'm going to show you the screen again, okay, so I can make it again. But that's where you can really know where you're at in the sausage factory, right? That if it's data, you're still in execution. If it's information, you're in monitor control. If it's reports, you're coming out of monitor control and back to the planning process. Okay, and we'll look at that again. Here's that same screen that I showed you before. So again, we're envisioning the work's been planned, okay, and this workflow eventually is going to turn into the deliverables, right? So through execution processes, as we're executing the processes that I just showed you, we're creating that data. That data is being subjected to those formulas, those measurements, those whatevers that we set back in the project management plan itself, right? So, and then that data comes to 4.4. Here, we either have a change request come out of here, and again, I wanted to show you where we did have change requests coming right out of the execution processes. Usually these are scope changes, personnel changes. These are usually corrections. So that's the other thing I want to point out to you again while we're still on the screen here, Aubrey, is that you have change requests coming from two places, but within the question, you can kind of get a flavor of where they're coming from, right? Because, like I said, for the most part, these changes are going to be adds to maybe additions to scope kind of thing. Not that these might not be, and the control process might say, listen, we need to add a piece or something, and that might be the change request. I'm just saying that generally in the exam, okay, if you're looking at a question and you're trying to read between the lines for some of these questions, you need to. This is one of the things I'm telling you, okay? The change requests can be generated out of the execution process group, probably for scope changes and personnel changes, and these are more going to be the CAPAs, the change in preventive, corrective preventive actions, okay? Now, if there's no, even so, there's always performance reports. They go back. So if my changes have to go through the change control board, and I'm going to show you that here shortly. And then there are performance reports now. Remember, so it's data, information, now it's reports again. Back up to the project now. Many of these reports are going to be disseminated out to our stakeholders. So these reports are going to be sent right out. We call it via our communications plan, right?
Hey, Clark.
Yes, sir.
Just a little critique here. Your little, okay. Your 4.5, I think, I can't even read it. Change control and monitor control.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's because of that. Let me change the.
I'm sorry. It's just the yellow. You can't read it. Sorry.
No, it's you're exactly right. And that's, you know what, it happens to me because sometimes I change a background and I forgot that it's going to screw up some there. And that's the way, I'm sorry, you can monitor control. Well, okay, direct 4.3 you can read, right?
I could read that. I just couldn't read the 4.4, 4.5.
Oh, okay. As you know, which is really, I'm glad you brought that up because that's the heart of change controls 4.5. That's your steering committee. Okay. That's your change control board. All right. CCB, you'll see either steering committee or CCB or something like that on the exam. Okay. When that they mean this, they mean 4.5, the formal change control process, right? So what happens in change control? We write up changes. For the exam, Aubrey, you write them all up, but they don't care. No matter how minor they are, it's like an ethics question, all right? Pick the toughest, the most ethical answer is the one that they're looking for here. When we talk about changes, the idea is that change control is all about identifying the change and then deciding it's not in scope. So if it is a change, all right, it has to be written up for impact. How is this going to impact the schedule? How is this going to impact costs? How is this going to impact resources, etc.? So those impacts need to be put in the change request. They go to the change control board. They decide whether they want to do the change or not. If they approve the change, it'll end up going right back into the, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have got out of that screen that fast. It'll go right back into the workflow, okay? And be monitored to see if we got, by the way, kind of extra special because we want to see if the changes we got our bang for the buck, whether we made the right decisions on things when we made changes. And not just for this project, but for the next one, right? Say, well, we ain't going to do that again, kind of thing. Now, before I leave here, like I said, I think, and this is me, maybe it's my vanity and because I spent enough time working on this thing, but I'd say this is about as simplified as how the sausage factory works, this big cycle works, okay? This is post-planning now, right? The post-planning sausage factory, here it is. Now, we're going to look at these control processes next, okay? But they're self-explanatory. Like I said, we're just going to we're going to measure against the baselines that we set. So it's pretty simple. We're going to blitz through these. I want you to see the flow. I want you to understand the flow, and I want you to understand that this is the heart of change control. 4.3, 4.4, 4.5, okay? Particularly 4.5, because that's the CCB. That's the change control board who approves or disapproves. No matter what happens to the change, whether it's approved or disapproved, it goes on to a change log. Remember that. We log all changes, whether they were approved or not. We log everything in project management because we like to log stuff, okay? But you might get a question like that. What do you do about if it changes? It still goes in the log. It's logged, all right? That's all. Before I leave the screen here, is there anything about the screen that confuses you? Or I'd like to think it explains stuff, but you tell me, Aubrey.
It explains a lot. I just couldn't read the 4544, but it explains a lot. It's easy.
Good. Like I told you, Chief, as you get closer to your exam, and I'll be here to help you with stuff like this. You got questions, right? But this is kind of like I said, you know, it helps you to go into the exam not just with the knowledge of PMBOK stuck in your head, but how to apply it. And I thought that that was very important that by the time we finished this course that I had you an applicational, foundational, kind of understanding. This screen is going to be in the movie. It's looks pretty good and it explains the flow. And like I said, the key is dated information reports pretty much tells you that this going around the dial. All right. Okay. Again, I apologize for the white font. All right. On the circles, but we know where we're at now. Here's where we're at in integration.
The white font is fine on the circles. It was just the yellow with the white. You can't read it.
Yeah, and you know what? I just pulled that one up. I probably should have. Again, I appreciate your patience with that, but I changed it, and I'll save changes. So here in monitor control, integration management, like I showed you in the Vargas drawing, it's really the heart of change control. And like every other integration management process, it's the traffic cop, so to speak, of that process group, okay? In, what gets out, how and when, that kind of thing. Here it's about controlling that data to information to reports flow. That's really what it's about. If you do not control that flow, your project takes a life on of its own, right? Without change control, without an inherent change control, which is almost like your heart and lungs, okay? That's how important it is to the project. The project will walk away and do whatever it wants to. Part of what I'm doing now with this engagement I had today is that they never put together a project plan, really. They put together task lists and departments are working on tasks, but nobody schedule anything. So they're about 3 months away from their first rollout, and they don't even have a project plan. So I'm in there taking all these Excel spreadsheets and trying to put it in a single project plan. Should have been done well before me, but I'm glad it wasn't because it's a gig for me. But I want to show you here in integration management. And remember what I told you about integration management. We don't write a subsidiary plan for integration management, right? The other 9 we did, but this one's baked into the cake. This is project governance inside the project, right? So we're going to look at 4.4 and 4.5 as processes. Again, envision as I'm discussing both 4.4 and 4.5, envision them back in that screen that I just did, the circular screen, right? That 4.4 is the monitor control project work. So it's the traffic cop for all the control processes, right? Of course, the project management plan, the schedule forecasts, cost forecasts. See where we're going with this now? We're now looking at project performance. Now, are we not? That's why forecast would be an input to monitor control. All right. Performance information, EEFs and OPAs. Okay. This is where we're going with this because this is what this is all about is monitoring the progress of our project on a daily, whatever basis we're looking at. And as you can see, the tools and techniques are going to be some of them you've seen already a million times ad nauseum. It's particularly expert judgment, right? It's the most nebulous, but maybe the most important tool and technique in your book, other than maybe breakdown structures, which I think are fantastic. Analytical techniques, PM information system, endless meetings. And the purpose of those tools and techniques, again, are those analytical techniques are going to be earned value management. For the exam, that's where they're going with analytical techniques, all right, that you're analyzing the work measuring against a baseline, right? But out in the real world, there are other ways to measure not just the progress, but the value of things as they're going along, okay? For the exam, they want you to know earned value management. They want you to know that's what you're doing here in monitor control. Your outputs, you're going to have change requests. You're going to see this, and you're going to see a common outputs now as when I get to the processes themselves. But you see change requests are going to come out of the monitor control. That's what you expect. This is where you really expect to see the CAPAs come from, are these processes, okay? Project management plan updates, so the effective progressive elaboration still, all right? Again, like I told you, we never really leave the planning phase because these change requests, once approved, where do they go? Right back to the beginning of a planning phase again. So we're never really, it's a matter of tapering down where we're doing less planning and more executing, but we never really leave planning. See what I'm saying? So there's no real hard delineation. You would never know that if you just tried to read PMBOK and figure it all out. It's a never-ending process until such time as the project's over. When you're monitoring controlling your project work at 4.4, we're tracking, reviewing, and reporting. So we're collecting and analyzing data for information, right? Data to information. We keep all our team and stakeholders informed. So this is where we're generating most of what our stakeholders want to know. This is what they want to know, how the project's going, the temperature check of the project. They really don't want to know what you had for dinner last night. They want to know the stuff like this. Okay? So you monitor for changes. So in other words, when the corrective, preventive, and defect changes, all right? As changes are approved and are put back in there, we want to look at this change that as it's coming through the workflow now with a little extra eye, right? Because it's a change. We approved it. We want to make sure that we got the value for it. We approved it for a reason. Either it was needed or it was a good addition or something, okay? So we want to make sure we got what we expected from it, all right? So we're going to measure it a little extra the first time through with changes. Earned value management monitors project versus baseline. We went through the earned value management. Plan value, that's what you start with. Another thing that this company didn't do, there's no costs associated with anything in any of their spreadsheets. So even when I put a plan together, I'm going to have to manage progress using something like present complete or something, because I'm not going to sit there and fill in all their cost tables so I can come up with a plan value. That should have been done a long time ago. Think about that though, when you're putting together your project plans, you want them all the tables that run in the background, so resource sheets, the cost sheets, and those guys. You want those filled out because that's where the software is looking to do the calculations. They're not going to be able to do earned value if there's no cost information. Okay. Schedule variance and schedule performance index, cost variance and cost performance index. Like I told you, what's that? That's current performance. Those 4 calculations for current performance. Then you have the things like EAC, BAC, and ETC, which refer to the forecasts, right? Future performance. Okay. This is what we're doing here. So let's take a look at 4.5, and the reason that we have 4.5, and this is the boss daddy kahuna of change control, right, is the 4.5, because it really is the change control board. That's what this process is. The process of formally reviewing, approving, or disapproving change requests, right? So we're managing changes to the deliverable. This is about scope creep, all right? Remember I tell you that if there's not a process, then changes just get incorporated. Then when we're not really in a project anymore, it's a trash can full of stuff, and it's overflowing now, okay? I have no problem with adding changes to a project as long as they're accounted for. So don't get me wrong, folks listening to me here. I'm not saying that we're gatekeepers of change, so we make sure that nothing added to the scope. If it gets added, I want more time and I want more money, and so to speak, for it to be in my project. Okay, so that's what scope creep is. It's unidentified, unauthorized work that somehow snuck its way into the project. Shame on you, because you're the guy that's supposed to make sure that doesn't happen. Proposed changes should be documented for impacts. And I told you, you're going to see this on the exam. I'm positive. What do you do with a change? With a proposed change, you write it up for impact and send it to the change control. That's the right answer for the exam every time. Got it? Change requests are always written up for impact. And then they send them off to the change control board so that they can make that decision. You might even be part of this change control board if it's a small enough project. If it's this real small project, you might be the change control board yourself. Who the hell knows? But what I'm saying is this is a formal step. This is a formal step, and when it's approved, baselines get changed if the change is big enough. If a change is big enough, I'm actually going to re-baseline a project. Now, I told you that when you baseline a project, it's baselined. And to change your baseline has to be done formally. Because we're not going to just say, well, a bunch of scope creep got in, let's change the baselines, and now nobody will know, okay? All right, that's not project management, right? That's something like this, though, and a big approved change coming out of the CCB would be enough to say, listen, this impact's large enough, I need to re-baseline my project. And so you do, okay? Configuration control is something else that you need to know. It's outside of this change control that we're talking about is for the project itself, right? They're managed, but when they talk about configuration control, they're talking about the deliverable itself. So the engineers putting together the spaceship, all right, they have their configuration control. The software designers have their version controls. That's what they're talking about here, okay? So let's look at 4.5. Project management plan, performance reports, change requests, right, the ones that we wrote up, culture, and organization. So you can see it's pretty simple here. Within the project management plan, this is where integration management rules lie. Remember, we didn't write a subsidiary plan for integration management. So how do I know the procedure? I wrote it up as part of the project management plan 4.2 is where is if I had to say there's a .1 for integration management, then it would be this. Okay, project governance. As you can see what we're doing here. So we're getting performance reports and change requests for that the change control board can use. Expert judgment, all right? Meetings, change control tools. They don't call out any specific change control tools in PMBOK. So just know that generically, I'm going to apply different analytical techniques, different tools, different ways to compare, to ways to weigh value, whatever, okay? So I can come to the decision that that change gets incorporated or it doesn't, okay? So just know that. The output is an approved changes, all right? It's not the only output. You also have a change log, which is where you would put the disapproved changes. Disapproved changes are, go ahead. Question?
Yeah, I was going to tell you, just for people, don't get integrated change control, perform integrated change control, and change control board. They're two separate things from what I was understanding as well.
They are. One's a process and one's an entity. One's a process and one is an entity. The entity is a change control board. It's a handful of real human beings where this is just a process, right? That's the difference. But you're right. It's in a lot. Throughout the methodology, Aubrey, and I'm glad you brought that up because it's really insightful. There's a lot of things that are similar sounding, even processes that's similar sounding. Okay, and again, that's why I'm trying to give you differences, like the changes, for example. Where is this change coming from? Is it scope related? Is it kappa related? It kind of tells you where, gives you more insight on how to answer the question correctly. But I agree with what you just said. Thank you very much, sir. Very good input. And then, of course, the progressive elaboration that never ends. All right. I'm not going to scope management. And here, so before I leave the change control, I mean, I think I explained everything that you need to know for the exam. And I think you can fill in the blanks if I didn't explain it well enough. But as you can see, the work is being executed according to plan. So we put a plan together. We sent out work authorizations, all right, and people are out there doing the work, and they're telling us how they're progressing along. That data needs to be measured somehow, okay? And that's what we're doing here. And if we see that we need to make a change, then it has to be done formally. So if I had to pound something into your head about 4.3.4, 4.4.5, that relationship there is that it's a formal change control process, right? Okay. Now we'll look at the processes inside of the rest of the processes inside of the execution of monitor control. Remember I told you scope management, right, it's one of the triangle, right? It's one of the triple constraint, and that it is planning heavy. So it had all of its processes in the planning process except for a control process. Scope has two control processes. One for everyday use. This one here is going to be used a little later when in conjunction with quality. The difference between the two is that this, like I said, this is the everyday process, control scope. This is the one where we're going to be, everyday flow and looking. 5.5 is a little different. It's tied to 8.3. When I get to the end of scope here, when I'm getting to where I think the deliverable is where it can be shown to my client, where I can start to get its some or all of my sign-offs. So it's before a formal handoff thing. There's a process that we do where between both 5.5 and 8.3, we're validating scope against the quality requirements and getting sign-offs. So it's kind of a pre-sign-off thing. And it's a very good thing that we do in this methodology because we're letting our client see a solid looking deliverable a little bit ahead of time before it's ready to go, just to make sure that it's all firmed up. Particularly this is for quality requirements. So the 5.5 is used when we get down to the point. That's why. So I wanted you to know the difference for the exam. That 5.5 is tied to 8.3, and it's used and it's done when the deliverable is in shape to start showing to the customer for sign-off. Okay, 5.6 is the standard monitor control process for scope management. So let's take a look at those. 5.5, just like I said, it formalized the acceptance process by validating deliverables. So it increases the probability of acceptance and credibility. Remember, it's almost like a pre-screening thing. So maybe I'm catching some problems now before I'm saying, here you are, Mr. Customer, all done. You're not done. It doesn't have this. It doesn't have that. I know that we've probably been doing that all along, but this is more of a formal process of 5.5 and 8.3 that you need to know for the exam. The flavor is this, that you're getting close, okay, to the end of the project. Just like I said here, you're validating the deliverables from the control quality process, a review with the customer against scope and other project documentation done well deep into the project. It's about acceptance versus correctness here. I'm looking for sign-offs. I'm looking for the nod, the head to nod, so I can put this one in the books and move on to other stuff. Okay. So let's look at the process itself. And like I said, this is one we sits on the shelf until we're ready. At the other end, project management plan, requirements documents, requirements traceability matrix. Remember, this is a special process, so this is a good time to revisit the beginning. Why did we come up with certain requirements, particularly the quality requirements? Where were they born and born from? Okay, so I think that you should look at traceability for everything. Okay, at least just give it some kind of, I don't know, some eye service, role, something. But here they're making you look at it from a traceability standpoint, and I love that this is something that wasn't in the methodology years ago. It is now. They want to go back to when you're ready to finally sit down with the customer and we're signing off for acceptance. This is a good time to look back and see why we did this in the first place. Okay, you'll have verified deliverables, hopefully, as an input to validate scope and work performance data. So your tools and techniques here are inspection. Remember what you're doing here. Like I said, the flavor is this. It's you and your customer looking at the deliverable when it's pretty close. So you're using group decision-making techniques. There may be changes. There may be revisions at this point, that kind of thing. Your output are usually the accepted deliverables. So we got the sign-offs that we're looking for, right? So these are accepted deliverables, and we're ready to hand them off to the customer. So we'll have to go through close processes and stuff with this stuff and handoff processes, but we're ready to this is more of like where we get our sign-offs. And then we're going to see with all of our monitor control process, you generate change requests. And why wouldn't you? Because something isn't right, I need to generate a change request. So I want you to see, you're going to see common outputs from monitor control processes that you can kind of memorize. Okay, then if you see them, you say that's a monitor control process. Change requests, work performance, project documents. You're going to see them over and over. Okay, let's look at 5.6. This is the data. This is the one where we're going to use on a day-to-day basis to monitor scope to make. And what do we use as our baseline? The scope baseline, right? That's the project. That's the project plan, right? The project scope statement, the work breakdown structure, and its associated dictionary, right? That's the baseline that we're going to use here in 5.6. So we're critical to maintaining the baseline integrity. Like I said, I'm not adverse to change. I just want to know about it, okay? And there is a scope line in the sand. It's a scope baseline. And if it's not, then we got to talk about it. Now, if we want to do this and just incorporate it, then that's up to you. But us as project managers, I want it accounted for, okay? Like I said, the rebaseline is a major sea change. So we don't want to do this because we don't want to, you don't really never want to baseline a project because we just blew it, right? And we need a rebaseline. Rebaselining, a good reason is one I just gave you, okay, that the change control board approved the change of magnitude enough that you need to rebaseline. That's a good change. That's a good reason to rebaseline. Changes are compelled to go through integration change control. So like I said, you have to, every change must be written up no matter how small it is for you to get the correct answer on the exam, okay? You're going to manage your approved changes. So as the control board approves changes and they go into the workflow, they're going to be measured against the new scope baseline, right? Okay. Remember this, the change is inevitable. So like I just said, I'm not adverse to change. I just want to make sure that it's accounted for. I don't, especially as a consultant, all right, don't I want projects to keep going? Because when they're finished, I'm out of a job, right? So it's not that I'm trying to delay, but I mean, I don't mind. You want to add some more to the project? Goody gumdrops as far as I'm concerned. Okay, let's look at the process of 5.6. Project management plan, requirements documents, requirements traceability, work performance data, and OPAs. Pretty much the same input you saw for 5.5, right? Here we're going to do variance analysis. What is variance analysis? Earned value. Okay, it's so in the case of concurrent performance, we had variances, right? We had schedule variance and cost variance. We're going to do variance analysis, all right? And our outputs, and again, here's some of the common outputs from a control process: the work performance information, remember, because that's what comes out of processes, right? Change requests, project management plan updates, project document updates. You're liable to see these 4 outputs time and time again coming out of monitor control process groups. So if you're looking for a key to memorize, that's going to be one of them. Okay, is that this? If I see outputs like this, I know I must be in a monitor control process. I don't know which one, but I do know that these are going to be common. You'll show them to you. You'll see them again. OPA updates. So now let's go ahead and go into time management. Like I said, we're going to blitz through. Let me get a time check here. It's only 7:30. Good. Okay. I figure about a half hour or so, Aubrey, and we'll be finished. All right? And I'm done for the night anyway. But as you can see, okay, time management again follows what I told you, that the 3 baseline knowledge areas plus risk are the 4 that have all their processes in the planning group control process over here, so that it'll help you memorize them. They start asking about time management processes in the execution process group. You know there isn't any, right? Here's where we're at now. We're at 6.7. So remember, time management was the one where we spent a whole lot of time in, right? And why? Because we were working in the work packages. So we were doing a whole lot more than just time management. We were doing every other subsidiary plan management. So in reality, you would have never known that looking at PMBOK, but this was the place we did it, right? When we got our work breakdown structure in the time management, we had our work packages in front of us. And we were breaking down those work packages, identifying everything. That's when we did this. So let's look at the control. Now we have a schedule. So what is the baseline for time management? It's the schedule, right? It's the project schedule. We're either falling behind, we're over budget, that kind of thing, right? But the other budget for schedule is on schedule. That's our baseline here. Every one of the knowledge areas has some baseline of some sort. This one is a hard baseline, right? Because it's part of the triple constraint. Let's look at 6.7, okay? Project management plan, the schedule, of course, performance data that came from the execution processes, those project calendars, because what are we looking at? Schedules here, right? Schedule data, OPAs, and then our tools are performance reviews. And that means performance reviews of the project, not human resources here. So don't get those confused, because you saw performance reviews back in human resources. Again, it goes to your point that you made about 10 minutes ago, Aubrey, that there are similar sounding things that mean similar. There are similar acronyms like RB. There are 2 RBSs. There are processes that I would argue that are planning, that are not. So you're starting to see it, right? You're starting to see what I'm saying. This is another one. When they're saying performance reviews, read the question heavily and find out where they're asking you, what part of the methodology you're in. Maybe the flavor of the question will tell you. PM software, that's MS Project. Resource optimization. We talked about resource optimization techniques. These are those scheduling techniques that we talked about. Resource optimization for that would be where we're scheduling around our resources. Modeling techniques, leads and lags. Remember, they're your friends for scheduling. So for example, what I'm doing now is I'm taking all those spreadsheets and I'm putting dependencies to them now. So I'm really building from a PDM. That's why I'm almost starting from scratch at this place. PDM and working my way up. Once I have a schedule and it's a resource load, now I can get fancy, because they're behind schedule. So I can put some of these schedule compression techniques into place, like leads and lags and crashing and fast tracking and such. Okay. The outputs are work performance information, right? If you see an output that says info, where are you? You're in monitor control. Schedule forecasts, those are that's the future forecast, right? Change requests, here we go. Project management plan updates, project document updates, OPA updates, okay? So you're seeing the same outputs. You're going to see them over and over again. Okay. Again, when we talk about control and schedule, it's about monitoring against the scope baseline, right? So I'm sorry, the schedule baseline, which is the schedule itself. So we're either on schedule or not, and it's about plan value. So as we move across the timeline, we'll know we measure earned value, that's actual progress, versus plan value, what we planned, right? And the delta between the two is the difference. We're either right on, behind schedule, or ahead of schedule. Influencing factors that cause or affect change. So the reason that we do earned value management, the reason we measure our projects is because we want to find problems before they go off the rails. We want to make little adjustments and not big ones, all right? So this is the beginning, and maybe we have further analysis to do. Maybe earned value management only tells us they're only the flag, they're the red flag, but they're not the answer. But it does tell us something's wrong, we better go find it. So it's another good control. It's a great project control. In project management, we like controls. We like controls so that things don't go past something without having to do something first, right? So we manage changes as they occur. Like I said, so if changes are added, they're added to the schedule as well, right? So the schedule got moved or got added to, or got expanded, and we want to manage those changes. The results of the measurements generate those schedule forecasts that we talked about, and they drive iteration and revisiting of prior planning processes because changes go back where? Approved changes anyway, go back to the beginning of the planning processes. Like I said, we never really leave planning. Okay, the tools and techniques here, trend analysis. Some of these I've showed you already. So trend analysis, I showed you a critical path, right? I showed you critical chain, and I showed you earned value management. This is how you manage a schedule, right? So when the schedule is being executed, we have to monitor and control it. This is how we would do it. We identified our critical path activities, right? And so we manage the critical path. So what do? Grab float from non-critical path. What do we do on critical chain? We use buffers, right? What do we do in earned value? We're measuring against plan value, or actual progress versus plan value. Trend analysis, like it said, are just watching trends over time. Really, that's what tells you more than anything. And that's not just in projects, but in anything, trend lines, right? You know, that it's the last 3 measurements, trends going up. Maybe I should invest. See what I mean? And then you have the software to make sure that it follows it all. And so like MS Project or something, because you can't do this in your head. There's no way, okay? Showed you critical path versus critical chain. I'm not going to go back through that again, or at least not tonight. Work performance information. So again, like I told you, this is the earned value calculations that you're doing for schedule, all right? Project management plan updates and document updates. So you're going to have those coming out. Progressive elaboration never ends. OPA updates. Okay. Let's go into cost management. Again, this is the third of this triple constraint, right? And again, it's, like I said, it's process. All its processes are in planning except for its control process. So what is the control baseline that we're going to measure against? It's the project budget, right? It's the project budget and plan value. The plan value is really your cost baseline, is it not? So your cost baseline is the total plan value for the project broken out task by task. That's how you manage it, okay? If that task cost what it was supposed to or it didn't, this is how we're measuring, okay? Because we established plan value way back early, okay, of not only at the task level, but at the project level. That is the baseline we're going to measure the data that's going to turn into information, that's going to turn into reports. Okay, so let's look at 7.4, okay? Project management plan, those funding requirements. Like I told you, okay, that the control costs, part of it's about we can only schedule the work that they're going to fund us for. So I may have a $2 million project, but they're only going to fund it $200,000 a quarter. That's all the work I can schedule. I need to know that for the control of my costs. Work performance data, okay, coming out of the execution process and OPAs. Those OPAs could be forms, they could be processed, there could be a lot of things that your organization wants you to do about controlling costs. Sometimes I'll tell you in the work breakdown structure, for example, those control accounts that we talked about, that these work packages roll up to those control accounts. In some places, those control accounts, once they're rolled up to, kick off another process. say, okay, it's time to pay the vendor now, because the 6 tasks within the work process, then within the work package that he was supposed to complete are complete, rolled up to the control account now complete, because remember the 100% rule within the breakdown structures, that maybe triggers a payment. That's what I'm saying. Tools and techniques, they are in value management, right? Particularly in schedule and in cost. In schedule and cost, we're measuring for planned value. There are other ways to measure the value of a project or the progress of a project, like I said, percent complete. There's other, but they're nowhere near as good as this. This really is the health of the project. This tells us where we're getting the bang for the buck and everything when you use earned value. Told you about forecasting. So that's, you have current performance calculations and future performance calculations. And remember, forecasting is based on current performance. So the snapshot we're taking today, okay, if we stay on current performance that we're performing like today, this is what EAC will end up looking like, kind of thing. All right, but that's what they mean by forecasting, that you're basing it on if we continue current performance. Is it typical or atypical, right? Remember, that's your biggest question that you're going to ask first about which EAC that you're going to use. Remember, we talked about TCPI, which is 2 complete performance index, meaning from this point on, in an index fashion, how efficient do we have to be to get us back on track? The example I showed you was ridiculous. There's no way we're gonna perform 3.5 times better than planned from this point on. In the real world, we're just, maybe we're running at 0.93 or something like that in schedule, and 0.96 in cost performance. So we're really not that far off. TCPI would be 1 point something. So maybe we could say, hey, we could add a couple of people here. Maybe we could press a schedule there and actually do get back to BAC. It can be done. Okay. Not an example I showed you, but in the real world, if you've been managing your project correctly, sometimes you do have an overrun and you want to get back to TCPI. If you're not too far off, you can pull it off. Okay. And you also have performance reviews, and you're using your PM software, because there's no way you do all this. And we talked about reserve analysis, right? That was tied to what? Risk management as well. So it's part of cost management and risk management of these reserves. Because what we're doing here is we're putting pockets of resources, money and time aside for us. Here it's money putting aside for us. We figured out reserves at the contingency level, at the work package level, and management reserves for the unknown unknowns. So again, at this point, I might as well say it again. Contingency and work packages are for the known unknowns, those risks that we calculated, that we came up with. Unknown unknowns are things that came out of nowhere that nobody could have come up with. Changes in the environment, changes in government, anything. All of a sudden, it's all different now. And those management reserves we have to ask for. So do you know the difference? The output is going to be info, right? Because again, I'm trying to pound that into your head. Work performance info, cost forecasts, change requests coming out of a control process, of course, of change requests, and the effect of progressive elaboration, OPA updates. See the common outputs again from a control process. But here, both in time, know that in time and costs are about sending out forecasts, right? So they're going to have a couple of extra outputs. But the common ones are information, change requests, progressive elaboration, and OPA updates that you're going to see coming out of control processes. Okay, sorry, I put that screen up there. Let's look at risk management. Quick time check here. 7:42, we're doing good. Okay. This is the fourth of the knowledge areas that I told you has all of their processes in the planning processes except for its control. I say this because you're a guy that likes to memorize stuff, Aubrey, so I'm giving you patterns. We went through the risk management process. And again, while I'm sitting here on the screen, I like to point out that it's like all the other knowledge areas, isn't it? We came up with a plan and rules for the road within risk. And then we did the funnels, fences, and bite-sized thing that we've done time and time and time again, right? Funnels, fences, bite-sized. That's, if I follow this through, that's pretty much what we're doing here. And once I have a plan in place, I need to control it. This makes all this, if you think like that, That's exactly what's going on here. Okay. So let's look at 11.6. And again, it's a control process, so it measures against a baseline. And what is that baseline in risk management? It's the risk register, right? It's a living document that tells us all about our risks and what at that point. It's a living document, but it's a pretty good one, right? It's a pretty good one. If we stayed on top of our risks, it's even maybe even better than some of the others, because in risk management, we figured we had to identify trigger and precursors, right? Where some of the others we didn't. So risk management gives us an element of proactivity that we don't see in other places. But that's the baseline. So even though there is no such thing as a risk baseline, there is, okay? I don't care what PMBOK says. It should be part of their methodology that that's the baseline so that people would understand the methodology a lot more if they understood that what these control processes are measuring the flow of work versus what we planned. That's a baseline, no matter what you look at. Here, it's the risk register, okay? So let's look at 11.6, okay? The project management plan, the risk register, their key input, right? Data, work performance data in, work performance reports. These are made their way all the way around through the cycle. Risk reassessments. That's all we're doing with risk, right? Because risk is not a baseline. It needs to be re-baselined through formal change control. Risks change on a day-to-day basis, okay? Because of the lay of the land, because new stakeholders, because, okay? That's why we assign the risk register to someone on our team, because it's constantly monitored. Risk really can take you down if you don't monitor it. So you're constantly reassessing. Remember what I told you about audits. Audits are formal. So you're going to schedule points in your project where you're going to stop and really look at risk from a formal standpoint all the way through. Not just a quick inspection. Yeah, we're on track. Let's keep going. Remember, the word audit means formal in PMBOK. Okay. Variance and trend analysis. I've showed you both before. Technical performance measurements has to do with the deliverable itself. Reserve analysis, which I told you is really part of, that's where it ties. Cost management is tied here to risk management because we're looking to try to hedge costs. So there you see the reserve analysis and the endless meetings. Okay, here's your outputs that you see all the time. Remember what I said, data in, info out, right? So you see a pattern, Aubrey. Work performance information out, change requests out, right? There's the buckets, the OPA updates. That's what I'm saying. I know. I'm sorry. I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but this is if I'm going to, this is the time for me to do it. As I'm showing you these processes are just how similar they really are. Okay, and from an input-output standpoint. Okay. When we look at control risk, it's about implementing those risk response plans, because what are those CAPAs? In risk response, it's those plan Bs that we came up, remember? So for the high risk plans, and that's not the only thing we're going to do, but on the exam, that's going to be one of the actions that comes out of controlling risk is that you're going to implement your contingency plans, right? When appropriate. You're going to continually optimize your risk strategies. That's what we talk about, those risk reassessments so much like everything else, much like quality, okay? It's a continuous improvement. We're continually looking, measuring, go back to the beginning of the cycle over and over again, okay? Using variance and trend analysis. And like I said, you have to be careful when you talk about human baselines. But like I said, this one, if you're a good project manager, we did have a lot of measurements and a lot of controls. So we did use the funnel fences bite-sized thing, okay, to get our arms around something usually could be pretty nebulous. You want to review your assumptions at some point. That you made assumptions when you did your course, and so at some point you want to prove or disprove that those assumptions were correct. All right, compliance mechanism for proper and process and procedure that was built into the .1. Remember, so however we decided to do that, we're going to apply it in control risk. Shows how the contingency reserves need to be modified. So like I said, reserve analysis is about constantly saying, we get past a risk event. I don't need to have that in that reserve anymore, right? I can take that reserve, retire that risk, and reallocate that reserve to something else. That's what we're doing here when we're constantly reviewing our contingency reserves, because as the project progresses, the reserve requirements change. Okay. Okay, we look at the outputs, change requests. Usually they're corrective or preventive actions. Our document updates, the outcomes of risk reassessments and audits. These are, so you have a couple more outputs here, but like you did with the other, you have to have the outputs that are consistent with the knowledge area that we're in. So when we're in risk management, when we're controlling risk, you would assume that you would have the output of those reassessments would be an output from this process, right? The audits and risk reviews that we did. The actual outcomes of project risk and risk responses. So when if I put a plan B in place, it's much like an approved change, right? It gets put into the workflow, and when it gets around to be measured again, I'm watching it a little extra close. All right. Okay. Now let's go to quality management. And listen, if I'm going too fast, stop me. But like I said, as you can see what we're doing here in these control processes, we have established baselines long ago. So we're just, is the work to plan. That's what we're doing with each and every one of these. Here's quality management. I said, I'm glad that we have quality now as part of project management. There's only 3 processes, 3 powerful ones. And here at 8.3, we're controlling quality. So again, it's a control process measuring against a baseline, and that was those quality requirements that we set back in 8.1. That's our quality baseline. So quality control is the process of monitoring, controlling results of quality activities. So the activities that were done in 8.2, remember the actual execution, people out there doing their samples and their inspections and whatever they're doing, making their meetings, the cost of quality, right? This is where the process for recommended changes and such are assessed. Key benefits here for controlling quality is identifying areas of poor quality for corrective and preventive actions, and verifying the deliverables. I show you there were 2 outputs, right? Because one, just like in scope, we have our 5.6 was the everyday, I don't know, for lack of a better term, the normal control process for scope. 5.5 was situational. It's for when we get to at the end where we're ready to start showing. 8.3 is both. It's the everyday quality process as well as the one that I invoke with 5.5 at the end. Know that, and that's why I showed them both here. So 8.3 does a dual role. All right. Remember the differing terms. All right. The prevention keeps errors out of the process. Inspection keeps errors out of the customer's hands. Why? Because prevention was done well before a customer ever saw it, right? And inspection is at the last row. Now it's already billed already. So now I'm keeping it out of the customer hand. But I want to keep it out of the process in the first place. I don't want to put something in that shouldn't be there or forget something that should have been there, right? We're going to do sampling as part of quality management. And then all you have to know is that you don't measure an entire population unless it's a very small population. But a farmer that's making 18 million Viagra pills a day are not going to look at every one of them, okay, to make sure that their exact size and the stamp is stamped right. No, they're going to sample lots, right? So they're going to pick. So you have a couple of different sampling methods. And you do this to find out that it conform or not conform. So it's a degree of conformity, right? In your sampling methods. Not a whole lot of quality questions on the exam, but that's what they'll be asking you is more or less the cost of quality. What they want you to know as a project manager is that don't forget that quality is now integral. So you have to know that there's processes and there's costs, right? And that you have to figure them in. Again, just like anything else, we do it ranges with tolerances. Quality is okay. As long as it's within this range, it's fine. Outside that range, it's not. Okay? So quality has to do with ranges and control limits. Process is running and control if it's running between the upper and lower control limits. If it's not, and I showed you when we were talking about run charts and control charts about as I'm plotting across the time, okay, that if any single point ends up on outside of the control limits, that process is out of control. If there are 7 consecutive measurements that are all on one side of the mean, then that process is out of control. So know those two rules when we talk about those control charts and controlling quality, because it comes down to this whole Six Sigma thing, right? Is figuring the mean on the process of coming up with 3 standard deviations either side so that you can run that process, all right? So they want you to know at least that much for the exam. Okay, let's look at 8.3. Project management plan, the metrics that we set way back in 8.1, quality checklist. You know I love checklists. I think that they are as simple and powerful a tool that's ever been invented, okay? Data in, because it's a control process. Approve change requests in, because we're going to run them against quality requirements. And the deliverables, remember when we're sitting down with at 5.5, okay? So that's what they mean by deliverables here. Project documents and OPAs, okay? You're going to use the 7 basic quality tools just like you did in course, so just know of them, all right? Statistical sampling, that you're not going to look at an entire population. You're going to sample. And you can do inspections, which are not audits. Audits are formal. Inspections are the daily routine. My QA, my inspector goes out there and he's checking to make sure everything's okay. This is your daily routine, all right? This is less formal. Approve change request reviews, all right? So as changes are, and like I told you, we like to, especially as a change has been incorporated, we want to monitor it a little extra close. Not just because it's special, but because we want to know that we made the right choices, that the change that we had hoped that happened, et cetera, okay? So you saw it in a couple of the other places. You're seeing it here. Our approved change was changed for a reason. We want to make sure that we got that reason. And how would we know that? By the control process that measures it the next time it comes through the cycle, okay? So the outputs of 8.3 are quality control measurements, right? And validated changes. So those quality control measurements can turn into those change orders. So you have those validated changes, verified deliverables. That would have been the one that came with 5.5. Work performance information, because that's a control process. Change requests and your progressive elaboration, your OPA updates. So again, there's your common ones, and then the ones that have to do with quality. Okay, this one with the 5.5 is the fly in the ointment. But like I said, you're looking at these control processes. You have outputs that have to do with its knowledge area itself, and then you have the common ones. Okay, this will help you in the exam. Okay, human resources has no monitor control, has no monitor control process. That's because humans aren't measured like we'd measure everything else. We didn't set a human baseline here, okay? We're monitoring monitoring, controlling our human processes here in execution. So remember, even included that exit meetings and everything. So these 3 processes covered the entire journey, the entire engagement with our project team, all right, including releasing them back to their functional organizations. So we don't have a process to review here, okay? Communications management, we do. And again, it's just 3 simple processes. So some of these are just like this, nice 3 simple process. There's no such thing as a communications baseline, but there is, right? And what is that? It's the communications plan, right? It's that detailed spreadsheet that we put together or whatever. Maybe we didn't do it next time. Maybe we did it in SharePoint or whatever we did it in. But the point is that it's a controlled communications plan that says who gets what, when, and how, okay? That is the baseline. We're either communicating as we planned or not. We're either completing work like we planned or not. We're either spending our money like we planned or not. You see the common thread here. We are or we're not, and here in these monitor control process, we're finding out exactly how well we're doing, okay? So let's look at 10.3, and like I said, the baseline for this is the control plan. The communications plan. Monitor and control communications to meet stakeholder requirements as defined in the communications management plan, right? So communications are key communications during that would be performance, statuses, reviews, assignments, and costs. We're talking to our stakeholders about a whole lot of things, but here out of the control process, what they want, do they want to know how well the project's going? So performance and statuses and things are what's coming out of here. Again, like I told you, you have information coming out of a whole lot of places, right, Aubrey? But this is a key when they start asking you about control processes. What outputs do I want from my stakeholders? They want to know how the project is going when we're talking about a control process. So the flavor of the question is going to help you answer it, right? Key tools of the information management systems could be that SharePoint, it could be MS Project Server, it could be a lot of, whatever we're using to manage the communications per our project. We ensure communications is in conformance to plan. So like I said, communications happens the way that we planned it to in the Excel spreadsheet. And again, as people get used to this, their agita level there goes way down. That keeping everything at an even keel thing that I talked about. This is part of how you do that. Is it that you tell people, you set them up with scheduled communications, and scheduled meaning you keep to this. So I found in my career that when people didn't get what they thought they were supposed to, a lot of times they just freak out. They start thinking anything they want. Everything must be falling apart. The world's falling. If they're thinking that, maybe it's part them, but it's also part you for failing to communicate as you had promised you would. That's what I'm saying. It's part of keeping everybody's expectations reasonable. And I'm telling you, the power of that, Aubrey, is that if I need to lean on them, I need them to work a little harder, or I need a stakeholder to go get me something, or I need a favor, or I haven't had people up, down, up, down, up, down. It's not an emotional roller coaster, a project. It can be, but you got to try to keep the roller coaster as little as possible. And a communications management plan is really one of the very finest tools to do that. Okay, so let's look at the process itself. Course of project management plan, project communications, that's the communications plan, issue logs, data in, OPAs, tools and techniques, information management system. So we're running our communications plan probably through a SharePoint or something. And then, of course, expert judgment and endless meetings, because we can't live without those, can we? The outputs, again, here's the common output because it's an info. When you see info, we know it's an output from a control process. Data in, info out. Change requests, we know either they come from an execution process, they can come from control processes. So you'll know CAPAs versus the flavor of the question, but it's a common output. The buckets for progressive elaboration and the OPA updates. So there you go. You're seeing them over and over again. And again, look, that's what I'm telling you. When you control communications, the key tool is the plan that you put together. So just follow your own plan. You're doing all the control you need to do, right? Adjust your plan as people come on and off the project. But that plan helps you keep your stakeholders at an even keel. Keeps them informed, keeps them engaged, keeps them. That's what I'm telling you. I don't know if I can make that point any stronger. All right. Now we'll go to procurement management, okay? Quick time check here. It's 8:01. I have procurement management. How many do I got left? I got this one, and I got stakeholders, which will go fast, and 2 close processes. 15 minutes, Aubrey. Okay, you can hang with me?
Yes.
Okay, because we're going to get through these layers. Only 4 processes left to show you guys, including the 2 close processes, and we're done for tonight. Okay, so let's go ahead and blitz through. We might even be done faster than 15 minutes. But let's look at procurement management. And the reason I'm blitzing through monitor and control is because, like I said, these control processes, as I'm showing to you, they look alike, don't they? They're almost like the Patty Duke show. Remember the old Patty Duke show? You know, they laugh alike, they walk alike, at times they even talk alike. Okay, these control processes look so much alike that they have their individual knowledge area to worry about, but they have common inputs, common outputs, and common objectives. I'm measuring against a baseline. I'm measuring work in progress against a baseline. You think like that, you're going to be just fine. So when we talk about procurement management, I'm going to stop here and ask you, Aubrey, tell me, what would be the baseline in procurement management? What do I use to control procurement management?
Just forgot. Sorry.
That's okay.
That'd be the control procurement.
Yeah.
Shoot. Sorry.
What is procurement?
I'm thinking of.
What is procurement? It's purchasing, right?
Right. So you're looking at the fee, controlling how much it is.
Right. Via the contract. Via your contracts and agreements. That's your baselines. Remember when we picked our vendor out and they made him agree to T's and C's, and we made them agree to schedule them. That's
Yeah.
the baseline. Okay, with material guys, we made them agree to delivery schedules. Okay, those are our baselines for procurement management. The what they agreed to, all right, and is what we're going to use to keep them in line. That's the baseline here. Okay, make sense?
That makes sense. Sorry, I was having a brain fart.
That's okay. And sometimes when I say, "Hey, you know, you're like, "Huh, me?" Okay, so let's get through this. All right, we got four processes, and we're done. We're all the way through the methodology, and then we'll do review Wednesday night. Project management plan, procurement documents, agreements, approved change requests, work performance reports, and work performance data. You see reports and data because you're going to go through these processes time and time again, particularly with vendors that come on and off the project. Okay, I have a contract control change control system that I'm using as tools, but I'm telling you, my as I'm executing my project, my baseline is the contract that they agreed to. So we talked about those contract types. Those are just the contracts, but the contracts always point to other documents, right? So refer to Appendix A, and Appendix A is the schedule that you said you would agree to. Okay, so it's contract plus attachments is what I'm talking about for a baseline. What I got them to agree to, they signed to. They did. You wanted this job. You said you were going to do this. That's my baseline. In some companies, I actually have a change control system that is formal, but here in the methodology, know that there has to be some kind of change control system, just like there's a scope control system, right? That I'm putting that I just don't do contract changes willy-nilly. And I told you in fixed price contracts, maybe I can't. Maybe I got to redo a whole new contract to do change control. But if I'm going to use cost plus contracts, and I do a lot, I want to have some kind of system in place that I can revise my contracts and keep everyone in the organization informed. I have procurement performance reports. These are much like human resource performance reports, right? I'm measuring how well I think my vendor is performing, okay? It's going to be done with measurements, but it's also going to be subjective, all right? This is me. I'm going to do inspections and audits. So that means I'm going to do everyday stuff, and I'm going to do formal stuff. If you don't go out there and check your own work, vendor's work, then I don't know what you're doing. Vendor comes in, and he's out there working independently. You really got to go out and check on him. You got to have him give you progress on a regular basis, and you got to do it in a formal fashion. You have performance reporting, okay, as part of those tools and techniques, and then you have a payment systems. So part of controlling these guys is not just pointing to the contract, but saying, listen, you're not going to get paid if you don't do this, all right? Or you're going to get a partial payment or whatever, okay? That's the carrot. All right, with that moves vendors. If you have to do it, then it's their money. All right, that's their fine. So, and their payment systems are a control device, good and bad. It's also, if I'm paying them on time, it means that they love it. They're going to come to my job site first before going to somebody else's. All right. Claims administration, meaning that within the contracts, I had some sort of procedure about if something wasn't right in the contract and we had some kind of dispute. And then there's a record management system. In some companies, it's a formal thing. So when the contracts have to be retired into a system and not just into some drawer somewhere. We look at the outputs in work performance, information, change requests, the buckets from progressive elaboration, OPA updates. Same ones that you see all the time. Okay. All right. Stakeholder management, 13.4. What's the baseline here? It's a stakeholder register, right? It's a stakeholder register. Again, there's no such thing as a stakeholder baseline, but then again, there is, all right? So for us, our understanding there is. For the test, there isn't. But for our understanding, we're going to use the stakeholder register and whatever shape, whatever iteration it is at the time. Because remember, stakeholders like risk, and they move around. It's a living baseline. Okay, so let's look at 13.4. Okay, the project management plan, issues, logs, work performance data in. Our tools and techniques are the ones that we've seen a million times, especially when we're talking about humans, right? Control stakeholder engagement. We talked about moving them along. Remember, you're trying to take them from negative stakeholders to positive stakeholders, all that kind of stuff, all right? Work performance information is an output, change requests, and buckets, updates, OPA updates. That's what you're getting from stakeholders. See, that's what I'm saying, the common outputs from control processes. Information management systems is your key tool here because, like I said, you want to use the communications management plan to manage your stakeholders. It's the hand and glove. That's why I showed the two knowledge areas side by side. I'm showing the control processes side by side, okay? Because they do. That's why you invented communications management plan to cater, to facilitate your stakeholder needs, all right? Don't forget to update your OPAs and data vital for future projects, all right? Let's look at the two closing processes because there's only two and then we're going to be done. The first one is the last of the integration management processes, and it's closed project. And I already showed it to you, so I'm not going to show it. I mean, I'll whiz through it, but it's the one where I showed you the phase gate thing, right? So you're going to do exactly the process we showed before we go from design to test phase. Let's say, for example, I'm going to stop and I'm going to do a formal review. All right. Are we still on track? Rah, 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 all the things that I want to know. Yes, let's move to the next phase. I do exactly the same process at the end of the project to say, yes, I met everything. Now close the project out. So you can see 4.6 is either close project or close phase. I've already showed you this process. All right. So if you see on the exam, kill points, phase gates, stuff like that's what they mean. They mean this 4.6 process of either close project or close phase, okay? And I've showed it to you already, but I'll go ahead and flip through and I say this is about sign-offs and also transferring the deliverable to the customer. And maybe the relationship over to a service department now. So if I'm installing software, the project's done. Now I'm going to go do another project, but that doesn't mean my company doesn't have to keep servicing that software. So I'll hand over the relationship as well. Okay. I'm telling you, I'm showing you closeout contracts here, but that's the next process I'm going to show you. But I'm showing you twice because don't leave contracts hanging out there. I've seen them come back years later when lawyers say, hey, here's something we can sue somebody for. And that's the way they look at stuff. You know it and I know it. Lessons learned, all right? We just went through an entire project together. It was an emotional, it was a learning experience. Let's log what we learned. We got an education, we paid for it, especially in projects that were failures or were less than what we expected. Lessons learned are really important then. You learn more from your losses than your wins, don't you? Because you go back, it's like a football team that got beat on Monday morning, they're looking at the film. They're looking how they got beat with double coverage, and they got so they're dissecting, they're looking, this is the lessons learned. The next time I play the New York Giants, I'm gonna have a dime package and not over under package. So when they throw that, I'm gonna have an interception. Be a whole different game. Follow what I'm saying? That's what I'm looking for from lessons learned. Project phases. I tell you, that's that 4.6 I showed you. Remember the phase gate, stage gate. This is the process. Same for either phases for a phase or closing out our project. To show you formally the project, the process itself. Project management plan, we hope we have accepted deliverables at this point. We're actually closing the project out at this point. Expert judgment when it comes to closing out our project, analytical techniques in those meetings. The outputs are the final project service, isn't that a nice output? Final product service or result transition, all right? OPA updates are those lessons learned. So don't forget them, okay? So we're here in this process. We're formally just closing out the project. We have accepted deliverables. These are all our sign-offs are done. We're formally closing out our project, our contracts, our lessons learned, so that it's done with a capital D, okay? The last process, you've seen 46 processes to this point. This is the 47th and final process in the methodology, okay, is closed procurements. And it's just like I said, it's about formally closing out your contracts, okay? So you want to make sure that you go through these. And if it's a big contract with millions of pages, then give it to your lawyers to do or your legal department. Somebody should look this over and make sure that all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, all the codicils in the contract are satisfied, all that. There's nothing open-ended, okay, is what I'm saying. and that the contract itself is formally retired, that the organization knows that it's a retired contract. It's in the system and it's in a folder where they want it or sitting on a drive that they want it, that kind of thing. So a record management system. Don't forget your lessons learned, okay? Don't forget those because somebody in a back office somewhere is going to be slicing and dicing all the data that we created, the reports, the information, the failures, the successes. Somebody's going to be slicing all that up and trying to figure it out at the PMO level, how we do this better next time. But we paid for the, and this is the one, maybe the one step that's the most ignored is the lessons learned. And a lot of it has to do with because we're just busy people. You know, we're getting close to the end of the project. They want to pull me off and go put me on something else already. And we'll get the lessons learned later, and they never do. And it's not a good thing, okay? Like I said, you went through a journey, an entire project. We created a whole mountain of data that we can learn from, okay? Don't forget it. And for the exam, they're going to make sure that you don't forget it, okay? You have alternate dispute resolution within, meaning that you have figured out within the contract or outside of the contract some kind of process to resolve contractual disputes, right? So in the contract, you just can't. So in other words, the guy just can't. I don't want anybody just walking off a job site, right? If we have a dispute, I want at least we stay on. We have a mediator, something, okay? But we have a process in place. Last point is, I guess, when the lawyers get involved, they're the only winners because when lawyers get involved, that means everybody has to stop working because the lawyers are involved. Trailers pack up, everybody goes home. The only thing that happens now are lawyers are running up the clock, okay? That's all they're doing. So the project's going once it gets in. So I've always, in my opinion, in my try, is always, if I see that in a confrontational problem, I try to fix it. I try one last ditch effort before we say, okay, that's it. You want to sue us then, okay? But to me, I try to avoid that because if we can resolve it today, it's going to fix because then there's going to be no money left for either side. I assure you, when the lawyers are done. That's it, sir. Without getting into a review, we have now seen all 47 processes. Congratulations to everyone. We've now gotten through the methodology. On Wednesday I want to remind everybody, Wednesday, not Thursday, is our last session. And it's going to be mostly all mock exam questions and stuff. We're going to work on stuff together. Okay. That, like I said, we were a little bit behind. So I'll try to sneak review in as well, but that's what the whole session is going to be on Wednesday. It's going over what we did and maybe stopping to do some problems here and there. We'll do some mock exams and that kind of thing. But for tonight, we're done. Unless you have any.
Nope, I'm good. Thank you, though.
Okay. Well, that's good then, Aubrey. I guess we're okay. You know, as always, sir, you have me here. I don't mind your phone calls. If you think I do, I don't. I see you as very engaged, sir. So I wish you all the best. I really do. So, well, anyway, let's adjourn now. I'm going to stop the recording.